again, I wrote this article, and it essentially summarizes what we just spoke about, but in much more detail and with dozens of references. So please feel free to read this if you want a deeper understanding. We'll make it available to you.
So you are suggesting that raising glutathione levels in humans can improve the outcome of chemotherapy and radiotherapy. So why is that?
All right. Unfortunately, we have to just look at a little bit of biochemistry. Let's just, I'll have this chart up there that you guys can download a copy of this lecture later on and study it if you're keen enough. But let me just focus in on one spot in this diagram. We see here that the amount of glutathione that could be made by a cell has a certain limit, because if you reach a certain ceiling of glutathione concentration, it will lead to down regulation of the glutathione, or it slows down the production of glutathione. You have enough glutathione, your cell is told that it has enough glutathione, and it shuts down production. So in this manner, a cell will make a pre-programmed amount of glutathione and no more. Now, because cancer cells already have a super high level of glutathione, it takes only a little bit of precursors to shut down production through negative feedback inhibition. Now, the first step was to show this in cell cultures, which Immunotec scientists have done in much earlier studies. And again, I won't bore you with the details. Here's some references to look up if you want to get deeper into this. Essentially, you see where levels drop at the end of these curves when glutathione precursors get too high in the tumor cells.
Selective modulation, it seems to be, to many, including myself, to be a complicated term. Can you just simplify that for us, Dr. Gutman?
Yes, for sure. I'm a little more visual, so let's look at a visual model here. So here we see a bunch of glutathione precursors. Note that I have labeled some of them CY for cysteine, which is the limiting amino acid, more specifically bonded or bioavailable cysteine. Okay, so you've got your precursors, including your cysteine. And when these precursors are taken up by normal healthy cells, they're used effectively to raise glutathione levels. But when they get to a cancer cell, which already has super high levels of glutathione, they cause the negative feedback mechanism to kick in, as we just saw. In simpler terms, the healthy cells start to produce glutathione, but the cancer cells is induced to make less glutathione. So effectively what happens, as you see, is a selective modulation of glutathione levels, so that the glutathione levels climb in healthy cells, but drop in cancer cells. And ultimately, the result is that the healthy cells become more resistant to the damaging effects of the chemotherapy, but the cancer cells have less resistance, so they can be damaged or die off quicker. Selective modulation. I hope that's a little bit clearer now.
It actually is. So, Dr. Gutman, you always tell people to ask for others to show them the research to prove what they say. So clearly, I'm going to ask you to show us the research. Has this been done?
And again, thank you for asking. You're asking what most people want to know. And we did this study specifically to answer that question. So let's take a look at this study here. You may recognize some of the authors here, Dr. Bunos, Dr. Droge, and more. But let's just focus on the title. Cysteine-rich protein, in this case, we're talking about Immunocal, reverses, please take note of this word, reverses weight loss in patients receiving chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Now, this, unless you're reading the cancer literature, this was the first study that ever showed a nutritional intervention. I'm not talking about drugs like anabolic steroids, that actually reversed the muscle loss seen in end-stage cancer patients. Good nutrition can slow down the process, but we reversed it. And this clinical study meets all of the criteria for what we call a gold standard study. It randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled, and took place in multiple excellent cancer stations across Canada. You could see some of the names there: McGill, University of Alberta, McMaster, and so on. Initially, we wanted to look at both lung cancer and colon cancer, but we didn't recruit enough bowel cancer patients, so we focused only on lung cancer. And it's important to note that in our inclusion criteria, the patients that we picked, these patients had to already have shown signs of muscle loss. In other words, they were in their late stage cancer by definition. Some of the measurements were easy. They were objective measurements: body weight, cell mass, hand strength. These are firm numbers. Of course, we also wanted to look at quality of life measurements, which really counts more from the patient's perspective. These are a bit more subjective measurements. So we use a number of different measurement profiles, and you could see them here. And here you go, a clear and significant increase in body weight and in muscle mass. Again, the first time ever. And here you see that the patients themselves reported significant improvements in their quality of living. This alone is critical. And finally, the burning question: did these patients live longer? Let me just point out this group of numbers. A year after the study was completed, we went back to see who could report on their condition. About 80% of the patients treated with Immunocal were alive. Less than 50% of the patients who didn't get Immunocal, well, they had passed away. These are very, very encouraging numbers, and I'm calling out for more studies to further validate this. So let's summarize. Cancer cells are often found to be high in glutathione. This high glutathione can cause resistance to chemotherapy, yes, but when you grow these cancer cells outside of the body, then lower glutathione levels, this makes them more susceptible to being damaged or killed by chemo and radiotherapy. However, when you do this in a living organism, like a human, this may lead to extremely high levels of adverse effects and even death. So this, so far, has not turned out to be an effective strategy. And here's where our own scientists have added so significantly to the research. Through the use of precursors, glutathione levels can be selectively modulated with really, really promising results. So thank you all for your attention. And Doug, thank you for your difficult questions. I'm just going to jump on the slide for a moment to tell people that if they want more information about glutathione, including a whole chapter on glutathione and cancer, feel free to get this book over here. And you could find it on Amazon, and you could find it on Amazon Kindle, or you could visit my Facebook page, where I'm always posting new articles on glutathione research. And we will end up posting this lecture in a couple of weeks on my YouTube channel, Dr. Jimmy Gutman. So thank you.